Hey everyone, it's Gentry Stein. I'm here with the famous Yoyos, owner of Yo-Yo Factory and world-renowned yo-yo performer. And as you can see, there's a pretty crazy yo-yo collection here behind us that belongs to Yoyos. And so we have something pretty special planned today. We're gonna go over the 5 yo-yos that revolutionized yo-yoing. So Hans has picked out which 5 yo-yos those are, and we're gonna go into detail. And he's gonna tell us a little bit about why these yo-yos have revolutionized yo-yoing.
In the collection there's like 1,200 yo-yos, and basically what it represents is all of the research that I've done. Throughout history, I'm trying to find out if there were yo-yos that were made that had significant value in improving the way we play with yo-yos today. And if you go all the way back to the beginning of time, there's some pretty cool stuff. So let's go ahead and show them those 5 significant technologies that influence the way we play with yo-yos today.
I'm excited to see what your take is and learn some history myself. So let's get into this.
So we're gonna go back 130 years, and it's weird what it is that you think is important about a yo-yo 130 years ago. They couldn't even conceive of the way that we play yo-yos today. As a matter of fact, what they were worried about 130 years ago was taking 2 halves, putting them together, and keeping them from rotating. In other words, they wanted the halves to lock to each other and engage so that the yo-yo wouldn't free spin, and they only wanted that yo-yo to go up and down. So the very earliest patent for a yo-yo was a yo-yo that clutched together the halves to keep them from rotating, and then also grabbing the string so that the yo-yo would only go up and down. As a matter, it's just over here. It's called the St. Louis. Yeah, it's the St. Louis World's Fair.
So this is the first yo-yo that you feel revolutionized yo-yos.
And what it represents is the earliest known patent. So it has rim weighting. Also, it's the earliest known winged yo-yo. It's not your standard looping shape, but instead it has a bit of a flare to it. So that wider gap type yo-yo has been around since the very first patented yo-yo. So although this is the first patented yo-yo from like the late 1800s, it's the first earliest known dated yo-yo, and this is from the 1904 World's Fair. And it's actually cast iron. It's really heavy.
Oh my goodness. So this was made in 1904?
That one was made for the World's Fair.
Oh my goodness.
That was the introduction of the Ferris wheel.
So this yo-yo is 115 years old?
I'm bad at math, but I'll take your word for that. Your job is to just keep it going up and down as often as you can.
That's cool.
Okay?
Sweet.
So that yo-yo does not come apart. If you get a knot, you're gonna pick at it with a knife or a penknife to try and get the knot out. But really, you're not doing any dazzling tricks with this yo-yo. You're just simply making it go up and down. So then we move on to the next most significant yo-yo. Something amazing happened right around the turn of the century. The Filipinos were hand-making wooden yo-yos. Before they were making wooden yo-yos, they were actually hand-carving them out of a carabao horn, like water buffalo horn. They make the yo-yo out of one piece. So remember that last yo-yo, it was riveted together and clutched together, and it didn't rotate. And, well, the Filipinos had never seen yo-yos except in their final form. And when they were hand making those yo-yos, they just wanted it to look like a yo-yo. They didn't know that you could take 2 halves and an axle and glue them together, or cast it out of aluminum or iron or whatever. So they just hand carved a yo-yo into the shape of a yo-yo.
That's cool. That's super cool, yeah.
And when they made their string gap, they made their string gaps really, really narrow, and this caused a really evolutionary step in the way that we play with yo-yos today. There was only one way to put a string on that yo-yo. You couldn't go down and tie a knot. You had to just take the string and wrap it around the yo-yo and then give the string a twist.
Oh.
That effectively created a loop around the axle that allowed the yo-yo to spin inside. Yeah. Would you like to see one of those yo-yos?
Because this yo-yo won't spin at all. So then this one, the second one, is the first yo-yo that would spin?
Really spin on purpose.
Okay.
And even though maybe when they first started out it wasn't intentional, they figured out how to make that work. So this is called a Flores Yo-Yo, and it was the first let's say commercially marketed yo-yo in the United States. And it was Pedro Flores was the first one that introduced the modern play pattern of playing with yo-yos, the contest. So in 1926, he introduced the idea of getting kids together and competing, showing off your best tricks, and whoever had the best tricks, they would win the contest. But you'll notice that the string gap, matter of fact, I can't even put a modern string on this yo-yo. Yeah,
that's super thin.
They would do man on the flying trapeze, brain twisters.
Really? On that?
On that, yeah.
No way.
One little thing that the demonstrators would do to cheat is they would put a piece of sandpaper in there and they would kind of sand the gap and flare it out.
Yeah.
They'd cheat a little bit. The kids didn't know that. Right, so there's a Flores yo-yo. That'd be from 1926 to 1932. Then you got to go forward 30 years to get to the next evolutionary step. Would you like to see that?
Yeah, let's see it.
Okay. So the Swedish Kugellager, SKF. You have SKF bearings in probably skateboards and in high quality instruments. They were at their trade show and they wanted to be able to show off the bearing technology that they were creating for cars because they were also involved with Volvo. So in order to show off the technology that they were making these bearings, they took one of their bearings and they put it in a yo-yo. Now they weren't commercially necessarily selling the yo-yo, it was more of like a trade show giveaway. Not only was this an evolutionary step with the bearing inside, which would have been forgotten until the 80s or 90s, it has this other significant feature that we all take for granted today. And that is the fact that it comes apart in case you get a knot. Now remember, all those previous yo-yos were all about getting a perfect gap or being stuck together. SKF, they said, why don't we make the yo-yo come apart? And look, it's also rim weighted, you know, so they dug that out. There's a bearing inside, and they used the wooden, you know, the wood as the brake pad to help it to come back. So they were really thinking this through. And then again, it was just sort of forgotten until the 1980s and 90s when bearings started to become a common thing inside of yo-yos.
Wow.
So yeah, take apart bearing. There's a lot going on, a ton of technology, and it just kind of kept as a secret in Sweden. Can you imagine they didn't share it with the rest of the world?
It's cool because sometimes I've played with older yo-yos that don't come apart, and as soon as I get a knot, I realize like, oh wait, how do I take this knot out? But that's pretty cool. That's the first yo-yo with the bearing and the first yo-yo with that you can take apart.
Take apart, right? So then we go on to the next big evolutionary step. So in the 80s and 90s, they're trying to figure out how to make bearing yo-yos work like those old wooden yo-yos. Wooden yo-yos are great because they're very predictable. All you had to do is adjust the string tension. And with the string tension, if it was loose enough, it would spin. If it was too tight, you could loop with it. And that was pretty simple and easy, right? Mm-hmm. So then we start putting bearings in yo-yos. And the bearings would go down and they would spin, but maybe they wouldn't come back because they spun so freely there wasn't enough friction. The other problem was when you're trying to do things like brain twister or the man fly trapeze, you're landing the yo-yo on the string and you wanted it to be slippery. Well, with a bearing yo-yo, if the gap was narrow enough, you could get the yo-yo to come back, but you couldn't actually play with it on the string. It would just bite, snag, and come back to your hand and hit you in the hand. If the gap was too wide, it would go down and spin and it wouldn't come back, and that was just super frustrating. Throughout the 80s and 90s, we're coming up with different technologies with the starburst or brake pads. The thing that really took hold and influenced yo-yos was the replaceable brake pad. The replaceable brake pad was great because it made the modern bearing yo-yo play like an old wooden yo-yo. But those rubber pads would wear out and you were left again with a yo-yo that didn't work. It wouldn't come back to your hand. So by 2002, 3, or 4, the yo-yo players at the top level, they become just sort of frustrated with spending the money on replacing those pads. They started to develop this method of getting the yo-yo to come back, and it was the bind. So if you did the bind, you could get the yo-yo to come back. And then the evolution of that, they start developing tricks where they don't want the yo-yo to come back at all. They want a really wide gap. They're hand cleaning their bearings and making sure that they spin freely so that the yo-yo doesn't come back. So they take yo-yos, modify them, send them to somebody who knew how to modify them. This modern yo-yo that we all play with today that you can just buy, it didn't exist. So, trying to remember the year, 2004, 5, or 6, somewhere in there, Yo-Yo Factory comes out with the grind machine. It was the first yo-yo that you could buy out of the box where the yo-yo would go down, spin, and not come back, and it would only come back with a bind.
This is entering more of my time.
All right, so we're coming up to modern times. And in order to make a bearing work like that, so you can imagine if there's no lubricant on the bearing, it might rust out. So we had to go figure out how to make bearings that were dry but wouldn't rust, and they also had to spin free enough that they wouldn't be responsive. So there's a lot of technology went into the bearing at that time. Lots of visits to the factory and teaching the factory how to make a bearing that would work for the modern yo-yo, right?
Yeah.
And then that brings us up to really modern times.
Yeah. Can I try this yo-yo real quick? Sure. I would love to try the first unresponsive yo-yo. So as Hans was saying with the bind, this is what that looks like. And it's pretty cool to play with this one. Should we move on to the 5th and final yo-yo?
All right, yeah, and this one's a really important yo-yo. There's a big evolution in performance, design, quality of spin, and it was used to win many national titles, and I believe even a world title. And it's called the Shutter.
Ooh.
And it's the signature model of Gentry Stein. What's great about this one, so it got really wide. It's really difficult to make a wide yo-yo spin smooth. So the technology and the care and the material quality is really critical. So in order to get that to spin right, it takes a lot of attention to detail. And then one of the big breakthroughs, to get that kind of attention to detail previously would have been $100 to $150 for a yo-yo like that. And so this kind of broke the price barrier and got it down into the $50 range. So you finally got performance, price, smooth, quality at an affordable price. Out of all the history of yo-yo play, those 5 yo-yos, to me, really represent the big steps forward in the way that we play with yo-yos today.
Yeah, it's crazy looking back at all of it. Thanks so much, Hans, for sharing all that with me. That was a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed that. And also let me know in the comments which yo-yo you think was the most evolutionary step and which one is your favorite. Chance, what is your favorite yo-yo in this whole collection? Because you see this collection every day.
Well, it's one of the things.
You got one up here?
Yeah, this one.
Ooh, what is this yo-yo here?
Coke yo-yo, but it's bottle capped shape.
Can we see a shot of it? Ooh, why is this one your favorite?
Well, because it's kind of big. I like the Coca-Cola badges on the side, and I like to drink Coca-Cola as well.
Gotcha, sweet. Thanks, dude. Anything else you want to tell the viewers?
Don't forget to subscribe to Gentry Stein.
I want to share one more cool thing with you guys. Right here, I just noticed in the collection. How do I open this? Ooh, the Fast 201, which was actually my first yo-yo that I ever learned on. And this was like the same artwork and everything that I had, but mine was purple. It's fun to think back on all of that and all the great things that yo-yoing has brought into my life. So thanks to Johans, and thanks so much to him for letting me come and check out this awesome collection.